The wind tore across the prairie like a blade, slicing through linen and skin alike. A gray sky hung low over the snow-packed earth, heavy with a silence that felt more like judgment than peace. And from the south, stumbling along a frostbitten cattle path, came a girl holding an empty tin pail like it was her last prayer. Letty Wynne was 17, though the past winter had stolen the softness from her face. Her cheeks were sunken from hunger, her lips cracked, and the skin around her fingernails was raw from the cold. Each step through the hard snow sounded loud in the still morning, her thin shoes soaked through, stitched twice over and still failing. She kept her head down, watching the trail ahead, as if looking too far forward might unravel her nerve. Her breath came in white puffs, and her arms shook, not from cold alone but from exhaustion and shame. Shame sat heavy on her chest, thicker than the wool shawl barely clinging to her shoulders. She hadn't meant to come this far. Pride had told her to wait. But pride didn't feed babies, and her sister Jo hadn't cried last night, she'd whimpered like something too small to hope anymore. That sound would follow Letty into every dream for the rest of her life. She reached a bend in the trail where the cottonwoods leaned in over a frozen creek, their bare limbs rattling like bones in the wind. Beyond them, rising from the trees like something forgotten and weather-beaten, stood the ranch. A single, wide cabin of rough-hewn logs, a collapsed corral beside it, and smoke climbing from a stone chimney. Her fingers tightened around the pail. It had belonged to her mother. Had fetched milk every morning before illness hollowed her out and took her in a single moon. Now Letty carried it like an apology. She stepped into the clearing, boots crunching, heart kicking hard. A man stood on the porch, tall, still as the post he leaned on. He wore a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat dusted with snow. A long rifle hung lazily in his arms. Their eyes met. Letty froze. The man's face was carved in sharp lines, with a scar that split from his temple through one brow and down the cheek. He was older, 30, maybe more, with dark hair streaked with gray and eyes like iron cooled too fast. Not angry. Not kind. Just cold. She opened her mouth, but the words tangled in her throat. He didn't speak either. Just watched. I came for milk, she said finally, the sound like dried leaves blowing across stone. The man didn't move. She stepped forward, lifting the empty pail, holding it out with both hands. Please. I'm not begging. I'll trade, sewing, cleaning, anything. I have a sister. Just a baby. We ain't eaten in. The wind yanked the words from her mouth. He said nothing. Her fingers trembled harder now. The shame flared hot beneath her skin. She lowered the pail. I shouldn't have come. She turned to leave, teeth clenched against tears, every step away pulling something out of her chest. She was halfway back to the trees when the door creaked behind her. She stopped. Turned. The man was gone. The door stood half open. She hesitated. Waited. He emerged, walking slowly, stiff in one leg. He held the tin pail. It steamed. He walked down the steps and across the frost. Without a word, he held it out to her. Letty stared, not moving. She hadn't imagined it warm. She reached for it. Their hands touched, bare skin to bare skin, just for a breath. Something in her flinched. But she didn't pull away. He did. She looked at the pail. Full, brimming. Still warm. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking just a little. Thank you. He didn't respond. Just turned and walked back to the porch like nothing had passed between them. Letty stood there, snow rising around her boots, pail in hand, until the door shut behind him. She turned toward the trail, heart thudding unevenly now. Not fear. Not quite. The warmth of the milk soaked into her palms as she walked, careful not to spill, eyes scanning the sky that seemed just a little brighter. Each footstep was deliberate. The way a child carries light through the dark. But the cold didn't care about stories. An hour into the walk, the snow thickened. Her breath became ragged again. The wind shifted, sharp now, angry. She moved slower, legs numb, shoulders hunched. The trail had begun to vanish beneath a layer of new snow. Her eyes burned from the wind. Her lips split again. A sharp root caught her toe. She stumbled. Tried to catch herself. The pail flew. Milk arced into the air. It hit the snow like blood. No, no, no. She dropped to her knees, hands scooping snow, trying to gather it, to save it, to stop what couldn't be stopped. Her fingers burned. Her sleeves soaked. She pulled the pail to her chest. It was nearly empty. A sob burst from her throat. She curled around it, rocking, snow settling on her hair, lashes, shoulders. Her cries became muffled in her shawl. I tried, she whispered into the earth. I tried. The trees around her stood silent. Then, movement. A crunch. A shadow. She looked up, dazed. A figure stood at the edge of the trail. Just a silhouette at first. Then closer. The tall man. Grady Holt. He didn't speak. He knelt beside her. She blinked, confused, frightened. I spilled it, she said like a confession. He gently took the pail. Studied it. Then, without a word, he reached into his coat. Pulled a thick wool blanket from a pack. Wrapped it around her shoulders. She didn't move. He rose. Reached for her. She let him. He lifted her with surprising care, one arm beneath her knees, the other across her shoulders. She clung to the blanket, her cheek against his chest. His coat smelled of pine smoke and iron. He carried her back down the trail as snow fell heavier now, covering her footprints, covering the spilled milk, erasing the past hour as if it never happened. Only the pail swung gently from his hand, catching flakes like a basin meant for second chances. And behind them, the wind howled over the hills like a warning or a song, depending on who was listening. The warmth hit her first, not heat, but scent, pine logs burning slow, with the faintest trace of coffee and tobacco. Letty opened her eyes to firelight flickering against log walls, golden and alive, like something from a story she'd long forgotten. She was wrapped in a blanket too heavy to be her own. Her boots had been removed, her feet dry and propped near the hearth on a block of smooth cedar. She sat up too quickly. The room spun. Across the cabin, Grady Holt sat at a rough table, whittling something with a small blade, his movements methodical and slow. His coat was gone, sleeves rolled, arms corded with sinew and scar. He didn't look at her, didn't stop carving. "You're awake." His voice was low and gravel-rich, as though unused to being spoken often. Letty clutched the blanket tighter. "How long was I out?" "Long enough to freeze if I hadn't found you." A silence stretched between them. The fire cracked. Wind moaned outside the chinked logs. "I didn't mean to spill it," she said finally. "I was careful." "I know." His knife scraped wood again. She watched his hands, broad, scarred, steady. "Where's my pail?" "By the door. Clean. Next to your boots." He set the carving down, it looked like the shape of a bird in flight, unfinished. "You were shaking hard. Hypothermia starting." "I didn't touch nothing I didn't have to." "I didn't think you did." He nodded once. "Good." She noticed now a pot on the stove. Steam curled from it, carrying the smell of potatoes and onion. He stood and crossed to it, ladled thick soup into a wooden bowl, and brought it to her. She hesitated. Then reached. Their fingers didn't touch this time. She ate slowly, grateful. Each bite felt like a small reclaiming of life. When she looked up again, he was watching her, not hard, not soft. Just observing. "You from one of the cabins past Dalton's Ridge?" She shook her head. "Farther. Little shack past the dry creek bed. My daddy built it when we first came out. He passed 2 winters ago." "Your ma?" "Gone last March. Fever." He nodded slowly. "And the baby?" "My sister. Joe. She's just a year. I'm all she's got now." He didn't respond, but his eyes dipped to the fire, jaw tight. She took another bite. The warmth started to reach places in her she hadn't realized were cold. "You live out here alone?" she asked. "For 7 years now." "Why?" He didn't answer. Just picked up the carving again. She studied him. There was something in his stillness, not laziness, but a practiced restraint, as if movement cost him more than others. He looked like someone used to watching others go, used to not stopping them. She finished the bowl and set it aside gently. "I should go soon. Joe'll be needing me." "You won't make it back tonight. Snow's coming harder." Already drifted over the trail. Letty frowned. "Then I'll cut around the ravine. I've done it before." "In summer maybe. Not now. You'd break your ankle before you cleared half the ridge. You stay tonight. Leave at first light." The firmness in his tone brooked no argument. But there was no threat in it, only fact. Still, she hesitated. "You don't know me. Don't have to. You're a girl carrying an empty pail through a blizzard. That's enough." She looked away, throat tight. Her hands rested in her lap, still pale and raw. "I hate owing people," she murmured. He rose and placed a tin cup beside her, tea, steaming, scented with sage. "Then don't think of it like a debt." She took the cup and held it, fingers warming slowly. That night, she lay curled on the floor mattress near the hearth while Grady took the chair by the door, his rifle leaning against the wall beside him. The fire popped. Outside, the wind picked up, driving snow against the cabin like claws. In the dark, she whispered, "Why do you live out here?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Too many ghosts in town." "War?" He was silent for a long while. Then a slow exhale. "My wife. And our boy. Fever took them both. I buried them under the black pine east of here. I ain't wanted much company since." Letty closed her eyes, the firelight dancing behind her lids. "Then why help me?" Grady didn't reply. But in the stillness, his next words came soft, like something broken loose after years underground. "Because you remind me of her. My wife. She was stubborn too. The silence that followed felt different. Not empty, just full of things neither of them knew how to name. In the early dawn, she woke to quiet. Snow drifted in silver waves beyond the frosted windows. Grady stood at the stove, filling a small pack with biscuits, dried apples, jerky. You'll take the long trail east, he said as she pulled on her boots. Stick to the tree line till you see the old cattle marker. Ground's firmer there. She nodded, tucking the blanket over her shoulders, her fingers brushing the now full pail waiting by the door. He handed her the pack. Their eyes met. Thank you, she said, the words fuller this time, shaped with something more than gratitude. He only nodded. She stepped out into the pale light, boots crunching in the fresh snow. But as she walked, she glanced back. He was still at the door, leaning on the frame, watching her, not with worry, not with pity, but something quieter. And in her chest, beneath the ache of cold and hunger and fear, something flickered. Not warmth. Not yet. But the memory of it. And that was enough to keep walking. Letty hadn't made it a mile past the cattle marker before the sound of hooves snapped the breath from her lungs. She froze behind a birch, clutching the pail to her chest. The snow was thick, slowing everything, but the rider moved fast, deliberate. Not a traveler. Not someone heading to market. Bandit. Her heart thundered. She ducked lower. 2 horses crested the ridge. The first was a lanky chestnut, its rider hunched in a mangled fur coat, eyes scanning the trees. The second rider wore a black hat low, face wrapped in a scarf, rifle slung across his back. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They were looking. She crouched, breath white in the air, trembling. There was no path to run without leaving tracks. She turned, inching deeper into the trees, cradling the pail like a child. A sudden crack, hoof striking ice, made her flinch. Hey! A shout. She ran. The forest blurred around her, white in bark and panic. Snow clung to her skirts, grabbed at her ankles. Branches tore at her hair. The pail swung wild. Behind her, the thunder of pursuit grew louder, crueler. One rider veered left, cutting her off. A shout. A gunshot cracked the air. Bark exploded by her head. She stumbled, rolled, the world spinning sideways. When she opened her eyes, he was there, black hat, rifle pointed at her chest. Didn't think we'd find you again, he drawled. Little milk thief. Letty's breath hitched. Please. I didn't take anything that wasn't given. Don't matter, the man snarled. What matters is you saw too much. Hold, don't bring nobody in that cabin unless he's got reason. The other rider dismounted, circled her like a buzzard. Bet he gave her more and milk. She clenched her jaw, rising slowly, fists tight. I've got a baby at home. Not our concern. The black-hatted man stepped closer. Then, a sound split the air, sharp and deep. A rifle crack, but not theirs. The man beside her jolted back with a grunt, arms snapping to his side. Blood sprayed across the snow. They turned, rifles up, scanning the trees. Too late. Grady Holt stepped from the pines like a specter, eyes burning, rifle steady. His coat flared behind him, snow dusting his shoulders. He fired again. The second man's gun spun from his hand. Drop it, Grady barked. The first man hesitated. Drop it or you won't need to. The rifle hit the snow. Grady stalked forward, slow and deliberate. He stopped beside Letty, never taking his eyes off the men. You all right? She nodded, breath shaking. He turned to the riders. You ride back to Dalton's Pass. You say Grady Holt don't owe no favors. You say next time I won't shoot to wound. They scrambled to their horses, one clutching his bleeding arm, the other cursing under his breath. Snow sprayed as they vanished back down the ridge. Silence returned. Grady lowered the rifle. Letty exhaled like she hadn't in minutes. He turned to her. You all right? He repeated, gentler this time. She nodded again, eyes wide. How did you know? I didn't like the way they looked at you yesterday. And I saw fresh tracks near my trapline this morning. Figured it was an elk. Her knees buckled. He caught her. You came after me. He met her gaze, breath curling between them. You shouldn't walked back alone. I should have said that. Her eyes searched his face. Why'd you care? He hesitated. Because I know what it's like to lose everything. And I ain't letting that happen to you. Something passed between them then, quieter than words. Something known only in the look of someone who's bled the same pain. She looked down at her battered pail, the contents sloshed but not lost. I should go home. Joe's waiting. He nodded. Then let's get you there. They rode together, her on his mule, him walking beside, leading it through the winding snow. The storm had passed. The forest glittered in early light, branches iced in silver. The world felt strangely still, as if waiting for something to begin. By the time they reached the shack, the sun was just peeking over the hills. Smoke rose from the crooked chimney. She'd left a fire going. Inside, Joe wailed from her pallet. Letty ran, scooped her sister into her arms, heartbreaking with relief. "She's all right," she whispered, kissing her hair. "She's all right." Grady stood in the doorway, watching. Letty turned, Joe cradled against her. "Come in. Please." He hesitated. Then stepped inside. The cabin was small, just one room with bare walls and patched blankets, but it held warmth. Life. He set the pack on the table, added kindling to the fire, moved with quiet ease. She watched him, heart still thundering from what nearly was, and what almost had never been. He looked up. "I'll go now. You're safe." She swallowed. "Wait." He paused. "I can't pay you." "Not really. I didn't ask." "I know. But, if you hadn't come." He shook his head. "Don't matter now." She stepped closer, Joe bundled in her arms. "Will you come back sometime? Maybe when it's not snowing." His expression changed, just slightly. A line in his brow eased. The faintest flicker of something warm reached his eyes. "I might," he said. She smiled, small, uncertain, but real. Outside, the sun broke fully over the ridge, casting golden light through the frosted windows. He turned to leave. She stepped forward, just enough to touch his hand, lightly, softly. Not out of thanks. But because something in her recognized something in him. And when he looked back, he didn't speak. He just nodded once, as if to say, "I felt it too." Then he stepped into the morning, boots crunching in the fresh snow, the trees closing behind him like a secret kept between them. And for the first time in a long, long while, Letty let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, the world could offer something kind. Even if it came quiet. Even if it only came once.